Hey guys, it's Travis and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about a really cool special knife that was shipped to America probably in the 1830s from Sheffield, England. We refer to these types of Bowie knives as the pierced handle. And if you look at the handle, I think you can really figure out why. And these are really sort of a love or hate relationship when it comes to your taste in Bowie knives. Personally, I really like these knives. And they're not super easy to obtain, and they're very well made. And each one of them always has different types of variations. Well, this particular knife here, I'm going to pull it out where you can see it. It's, see if we can get that on camera. Camera will focus on that. It is made by Oats of Sheffield. And these are just really, really cool knives. I mean, just look at the really cool belly on it. It's got a very long clip point blade, and the sharp, the false edge is sharp. But you know, they're just a really, really cool blade and knife. Now this one comes with a very early sheath, and we can tell that. But you can see how thick that is. Really nice, hard, thicker leather than the later sheaths. And they're usually sort of embossed like this with a hard leather stamp, not just gold, and flat top ridge on the top. And these sheaths are just some really fine early Sheffield work. But you normally find these with this sort of, I'm going to zoom in on that so you can get a good look. That is actually a small, come on camera, there we go. That is actually a small version of a Spanish notch. And you can see that right here at the ricasso. And that's another really cool feature you find on these pierced handles. But the handle itself is just a work of art. They typically come with this sort of thick S-guard in nickel silver, and you normally see, which is I would say sort of like a you know, like a peacock or something like that. You can just really see that cool. Move this over here where I can get some good footage of it for you. Just a really cool looking handle. And I believe these handles were made out of a solid casting of nickel silver, and they're pretty thick. But then, and they're usually like this sort of peacock type bird, and you'll find them. I've got another one. I'm gonna do a comparison on it for you. But you know, they have some really, get this camera to focus. Yeah, really, really cool, evidently hand done engraving to get this shape. And you always usually find, you know, some sort of like a crown or something, but you know, just really, really neat engraving on this handle. And just really, really fine work. And just about all of them that I have seen, they always have, you know, this sort of ridge, and they're notched all the way across on the ends. But these knives are just really, really cool, and they, you know, they feel actually, you know, pretty good in your hand. And big old thick blade. Look how thick that blade is. Beautiful. Sharp and false edge. So this particular knife is made by Oats, and let's compare it to another Sheffield maker. All right, so we're back, and now we have a pair of twins. Well, maybe almost twins. But if you really start to study this, you will start to see some subtle differences between these two. And again, we have to remember that, you know, all these knives are handmade. So, you know, getting two identical ones is really impossible. But this particular knife, we can get the camera to focus on that. It is made by Butcher. And generally it seems like this particular style of knife, it was favored by two Sheffield makers. One was the W.S. Butcher and the other is Oats. But this Butcher, and I've seen this on a lot of them, has some very unique floral etching on it. And sometimes you have it on both sides, but this knife, it did at one point. And what's really unusual is, you know, normally etching is just on the blade, but this one, you know, it goes all the way to the ricasso. There's a little square of it here, and then you can see a little bit on the spine of the blade right here on the top almost. That's still visible, but this has got, you know, beautiful polish on it still, and it says warranted the best quality, which is typical of Butcher. But this is Oats, and it also says right there on the top of that blade, warranted of the best quality. So these little messers, you know, they were making these knives for multiple makers at the time. But let's look at these handles. So I've got the edge of the blade the exact same way, but let's just talk about some of the really subtle differences. Let's start here at the top, and you can see the fuller right here is different on both of these. Look how this one is completely different than these. Again, they're all hand engraved. You know, this one's got more of a little round bolster type look right there, and this one, you know, is just more straight. And you know, just look at the work on that. Now these are both the same type of birds, but if you'll notice, they face different directions, which is really, really cool. And both of them have, again, like I said earlier, that feature where, I'll move these up a little bit, it's sort of like a crown right there as you get towards that pommel. And again, they both have the notching on the sides. And if we look at the pommel, they're very similar, but not quite. I mean, they're a little different. And this one, you know, it's got the extra little tip on the end where this one doesn't. This one is more beveled, more like a crown, and this one's more dome shaped. But these are just really, really interesting Sheffield knives. And the S-guard is even, you know, turned differently. So, you know, this handle could, you know, it's just as functional whatever way you turn it. So whoever was putting these together just, you know, had one handle turned one way and had another handle turned the other on the other knife. But just some really, really cool and fine early Sheffield workmanship. Now I'm going to show you something that's really cool. As you can see now, I have a picture that was taken in the 19th century with a gentleman actually wearing this particular style of Bowie knife. It's really neat when you can look at a photograph and see the exact knife style that you own. And who knows, maybe it's even the same knife.